give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom.
Let us begin by addressing the Robert Downey Jr. sized elephant in the room.
Downey's soft.
It has become clear that Marvel has accepted the Kang dynasty is a dynasty of abject failure. Disney, feeling desperate, has resorted to grabbing at the low-hanging fruit of nostalgia by bringing back one of the most beloved actors of one of Marvel's most iconic and cherished characters. Except this time as one of Marvel's most notable villains.
Dr. Doom over here.
Relying on the directorial skills of the Russo brothers, whose work on Infinity War was legendary. Their work on Endgame, on the other hand, was questionable.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
While not perfect, Endgame was most certainly a prolific piece of culture for its time. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that Avengers Doomsday or that Robert Downey Jr. will be bad or even subpar. Only time will tell. However, given Disney Marvel's post-Endgame meteoric decline to mediocrity, my expectations are understandably low.
Color me skeptical.
It appears that Marvel, in all their infinite wisdom, have chosen to give Kang the old Biden treatment.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Where presumably they pretend he never existed and have moved on to bigger, better, less senile, and more cackly things.
He comes in the morning.
I would argue that this uniquely Disney Marvel problem is at least partially responsible for the current abysmal state of the MCU, among many other exceptionally poor choices, and that problem is hanging your franchise's identity around the villain. Even if the Russo brothers sell RDJ as Dr. Doom, which could be done with a delicate approach, the MCU has become a shadow of its former self. Compelling character arcs, creating through lines and tent poles that hold a franchise together have been all but discarded like a regrettable one-night stand. Superhero stories have never been villain-centric. Villains are established by their relationships to heroes. Even villains' standalone content owes it to the heroes whose stories justify their existence. What Marvel has done is create a villain without a protagonist. And I know what you're thinking, but radical, you silly dog, you. Dr. Doom is a Fantastic Four villain. Of course, and even more dangerous still. But what I mean is that Marvel has created the character and face of the villain before they've created any sense of direction for the current MCU phase. Dr. Doom vs. Avengers only works if you know and care about the Avengers. As things stand now, there is no through line about who the Avengers actually are, or who they will be, or what the overall MCU narrative is even meant to be. Dr. Doom is supposed to be the antithesis to the main event, the Avengers. It's the first word in the title, rather than him being the main event himself. But old Feige treats the Avengers as a brand to spin off of, rather than the culmination of interwoven stories. Come to think of it, I think that neatly sums up Disney's recent treatment of many of their major IPs.
Them to the last Jedi.
May die.
Now, back on track. If I asked you, who defines Marvel's Infinity Saga, you'd likely answer with Iron Man. Not Thanos or Loki, but Iron Man.
Well, what do we have here?
A ruler.
A conqueror.
He who remains.
The star of Creed 3 and the last Ant-Man movie has been dropped from all upcoming Marvel projects. That's after he was found guilty of harassment and assault on his ex-girlfriend.
Kang remains a strong example of this approach, and some of its inherent risks. Marvel placed all of their rainbow-colored hopes and dreams on the stunning Jonathan Majors as Kang.
Whoops.
Aside from the significant dangers of placing a multi-billion-dollar franchise's future in the hands of one notably unbalanced man, the issue became very evident upon the release of Ant-Man Craptomania. Not only did the movie have CGI reminiscent of a bad acid trip trapped in an 80s music video, but the storytelling was so aggressively focused on building up Kang that literally every other aspect of the movie suffered. He was set up by his variant in Loki Season 1 to be an imposing, indomitable force on a crash course with our sacred timeline.
If you think I'm evil, well, just wait till you meet my variants.
But as quickly and unceremoniously as Kang was brought to the silver screen, he was just as quickly defeated in the same movie, by an army of ants, no less. Ultimately deflating any sense of intimidating, grandiose, or threat Kang might pose as an Avenger-level threat. This tentpole was a disaster. Now, a tale of contrast begins with a villain whose purpose, while glorious, was in the service of enabling a hero's story. Loki's story is a tragic one, not because of his demise heroically fighting Thanos. No, it's a tragic story because Loki fell from villainous grace. His charming, cunning sense of subterfuge died in Thanos' fist, and was replaced by a buddy cop misfit toy in need of a friend.
That's why I'm a misfit toy.
And his sexy female self.
That's weird.
Loki's villainous origins in the MCU were less about his villainous nature as a villain, and more about his villainously unpredictable antics. He often functioned as a tool of a greater villainous villain.
A villain.
Which he villainously persisted until his heroic death in Endgame. Loki was a bad guy, though a complicated one. A megalomaniac who had charisma and deviousness good enough to fool even Odin Allfather. One of the most powerful and wise characters in all of Marvel. But not the TVA. Oh, no, no, no. And people loved him for it. Still, without Thor, there's no reason for Loki to exist in the first place. All those many years ago, Tom Hiddleston wasn't a household name when he first played Loki. Had Loki been played by a more famous actor, and had he been promoted as the character of interest before even announcing who was playing Thor in a movie called Thor, interest would have undoubtedly been reduced. Especially if the audience knew Loki wasn't set to appear for several movies and TV shows later, as the novelty and social media fervor settled down. It's a desperation move to yield immediate gains, but isn't a sound long-term strategy if Disney doesn't stop releasing dogwater shows, movies, and yes, video games.
You're welcome, Robo-Man.
Furthermore, Marvel has left nearly every other superhero in a state of flux due to their poorly produced, poorly written content and myopic fixation over girl power.
Fight them with your heavy special time. You do it too.
A practice that neuters returning villains by prioritizing female empowerment as a principle over character growth. I'm looking at you, Captain Marvel. These disasters have left many characters with an undefined future and are inevitably due to be shoved into a team-up so fast you'll get whiplash as soon as the intro credits roll.
All right, gang, whiplash.
Even with the success of Deadpool and Wolverine, the film failed to further expand the future of the MCU. It reveled and satirized the past, but laid virtually no groundwork on which the universe can move forward. Also note that Deadpool and Wolverine's main villain was not the centerpiece of that film, and that worked in its favor. When you consider Marvel's first saga, Thanos was a character who was built from the ground up, brick by brick. Many of these bricks were laid well before his first cameo in the first Avengers film, via the Tesseract, i.e. the Mind Stone in Captain America the First Avenger, or the Ether, aka Reality Stone, in Thor the Dark World. Some of these bricks were built by his relationships with individual characters, villains, heroes, or whatever Benicio del Toro was supposed to be. Distance and well-crafted storytelling gave birth to Thanos out of necessity. To that end, Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr.
Is it still the multiverse saga? Oh well. Anyway, good old Bob Downey Jr. is not a strong enough motivator for the MCU to exist in its current collapsed form.
Everything is falling apart.
People aren't going to be any more or less interested in Black Captain America Falcon.
You're not Steve Rogers.
Simply because RDJ will pop up several years down the road. To expand the metaphor, it's like trying to build a house with a single brick above a sinkhole, with a clown as the foreman. Is there a possibility that Robbie as Doctor Doom works out in the end? It's certainly possible. However, Marvel's tentative release for Avengers Doomsday is set 2 years from this revelation.
There's not much time.
Without delays, it seems unlikely they'll be able to generate any sort of momentum or again, lay any effective groundwork in time for Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom?
Truly, great actors as great villains deserve great heroes, but Disney needs to make massive changes and paradigm shifts within their approach to filmmaking sooner rather than later. Even then, it may be too late. If you like my content and want to see more, leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Catch you in the next one.